Greetings. This is the debate show. Tonight's debaters will demonstrate their competence in teaching students how to write formally. The debate will be held between none other than Mitt Romney and Barack Obama. Firstly, Mr. Romney will talk about formal writing in general, and then move on to describe how to write an essay. Thereafter, Mr. Obama will present how to write a review, and lastly, a competition entry. So without further delay, here is some world-class education. To begin with, one must understand the importance of formal writing. It is used frequently in job contexts. Of course, it is also used outside professional life to, for example, convey opinions. Formal writing generally enhances academic qualities of a text and forces the reader to require a greater respect for the author's message. Furthermore, when it comes to the structure of a formal text, it is often required to have a clear and interesting introduction in the beginning of the text, and a summarizing paragraph in the end that finishes with a conclusion that connects to the introduction. It is also crucial to have correct paragraphing and punctuation to organize different thoughts and topics. However, it has to be combined with proper linking words to create a flow where the reader can follow the author's thoughts in a logical manner. For example, if one would stop writing about shampoo and start writing about conditioners, it would be proper to start a new paragraph. The paragraph should also start with a linking phrase to create a flow throughout the text. On top of this, language is vastly important when writing formally. Firstly, it is never allowed to use contracted words such as don't and isn't. Instead, write the words in their extended form, do not and is not. Secondly, it is preferable to use a passive voice in the text. Therefore, the author should take distance from the reader and avoid addressing the reader directly. Also, personal pronouns should be avoided, and with it, the author ought to avoid subjective references. This can be done by only stating objective facts to support different claims and arguments. Nevertheless, in some formal texts, a certain degree of personal pronouns and subjective references are allowed. But they are always to be kept to a minimum, and the subjective comments should always be separated from the facts. Lastly, it is highly recommended to always use a varied, advanced, and clear language adapted to the recipient. To achieve this, one must avoid slang words, idioms, and vague words like stuff and really. Preferably use the words resources and truly. Moreover, there are many types of formal texts, and all have their special rules. How to write an essay will therefore now be explained. In the first place, when writing an essay, one must decide either to describe both sides of an argument or to only support one side of an argument. Because an essay has a purpose of arguing about a certain statement. This statement is to be rephrased and presented in the end of a clear introduction to inform what the essay is going to address. The introduction should also present any necessary facts to interest and engage the reader. In addition, when continuing an essay, it is important to use paragraphs, linking words, and other phrases to logically organize and develop different ideas. Thus, each paragraph is to be started with a topic sentence. However, Paragraph headings must be avoided. Furthermore, it is always important to be informative and objective. This can be done by supporting arguments with strong facts and examples. Personal opinions is, however, allowed, as long as they are strongly reduced and separated from facts. Finally, in the end of an essay, a conclusion should be included. The conclusion should, as usually, connect with the introduction and not present any new ideas. Other rules of writing an essay agree with the general rules of formal writing, such as the rule against contracted words and idioms. Unfortunately, the time is up for Mr. Romney, and it is time to allow Mr. Obama to demonstrate his knowledge of formal writing by first describing how to write a review and afterwards a competition entry.
Well, since Mr. Romney performed such a proper description of a formal writing and essay writing, one could write a review. A review is used as an instrument for formal writing in order to evaluate a certain product, possibly a service or an establishment, and so on. Moreover, it could in fact be used to review anything, absolutely anything, that a person wishes to assess. To begin with, a review should use a varied language that is somewhat adapted to the reader. The review should also be well organized by using an introductory paragraph in the beginning, a concluding paragraph in the end, and a body of text in between those two. Furthermore, an introduction is obviously used to introduce the subject of the review, whether it is a product or a service, or as the example given, Mr. Romney's performance. The body is placed after the introduction and is where one would describe and explain the subject of interest. If one, for example, is to review a presidential debate, one would describe and discuss the performance of the participant candidates, the premises where the debate takes place, and other memorable fragments of the evening. Equally important is that one should be clear and concise in the different descriptions and try to write in an objective fashion. For example, if a writer does not like seafood, it would not and should not affect the overall review of a particular restaurant. In addition, the author is to both praise and criticize the subject, and at all times, as mentioned, keep such a matter as objective as possible. Finally, in the conclusion, one may apply personal opinion. If, for example, a movie was appreciated, it is in the conclusion you would express that opinion and whether or not you would recommend it further for the reader. Now to follow up with the competition entry. In the first place, a competition entry is a text simply written with the intention of being used to enter a competition. A competition description states what a person applies for and possibly some other requirements. A usual requirement is to motivate the reason why one should win the competition. For example, think of the American presidency as a competition. A competition that requires a competition entry to compete. In order to win such a contest, it is important to keep the attention of the reader. Consequently, a competition entry has to be interesting. Furthermore, it is well considered to use a range of linking words and to vary the pattern of the sentences in order to interest the reader. As well, a competition entry is in the need of an interesting introduction, supporting paragraphs, and at last a summarizing conclusion. In addition, just as any formal text content, a competition has to be fit to the reader. Depending on the reader, one may use a less informal tone to seek the appreciation of the reader, although not too informal, in which the text loses its validity as a formal text. Validity as a formal text. To sum up, a competition entry has to be written in the consideration to the reader. Therefore, it is of greatest importance to write the entry in such a manner that would not repulse the reader. And now I will magically change my voice. To conclude the information that has been said tonight, it is important to always use a clear and advanced vocabulary, with a proper use of paragraphing and linking words when writing formal text. Also, it is never acceptable to use contracted words or slang. However, even though formal texts are supposed to be kept objective, some texts require certain subjective fragments, depending on the type of text. That was all for tonight's show. Watch more next week. Goodbye.